The Emperor threatened to kill Vader the minute he put on his armor. The most dangerous Imperial enforcer had just been birthed. Created through the alchemy of rage, anger, and revenge, former promising Jedi Anakin Skywalker had now completed his transition to the dark side under the guidance of the most powerful Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, who was now the Emperor of the galaxy. But why would Vader's own master try to end his new apprentice's life? That's the story we're going to tell today. After being rescued from burning alive on Mustafar, Darth Sidious took Vader to a medical facility on the now completely Imperial-controlled planet of Coruscant.
Where is Padme? Is she safe? Is she all right?
Vader begged, hoping that his fears were wrong. Without compassion, and perhaps with a bit of delight, the Emperor responded,
"It seems that in your anger, you killed her."
Squeezing his hands into fists, Vader grieved into the Force, sending pulses all around him, shattering everything in the room. Medical droids exploded and sprayed aerosol into the air. Delicate, specialized surgical droids and machinery short-circuited, and smoke filled the room. Darth Vader's anger was well and truly flowing through every vein in his now barely human body, and the Emperor was loving every second of it. Flashes of Padme, the mother of Anakin's children and now dead wife, thrashing through Vader's mind, after the Emperor had just informed the newly crowned Sith Lord of her death. Yet Sidious's joy grew and grew as this further fueled his new apprentice's anger and anguish. However, the Emperor quickly found himself to be the subject to this wrath that he so happily encouraged. Out of control, Vader's emotion thrashed into the Force. Without thinking, he ended up throwing the Emperor into the wall. Vader collapsed to the ground in despair. As he turned to Sidious, the all-powerful Sith Lord had some questions to answer.
You told me I could save her.
Vader turned his anger towards the Emperor. This desperation in Vader's now robotic and monotone voice was still just as sad as it would be if the formerly burnt and dying Anakin was voicing it, but it didn't matter to the Emperor. He simply didn't have the emotion for it. He would rather weaponize it through Vader.
"In your rage, you chose a different path,"
the Emperor said. Palpatine, still leaning against the wall after Vader had tossed him there, studied Vader carefully. His wife and unborn child were dead, his friends all gone, and even his body was nearly taken from him. In this moment, Vader was at rock bottom, and although the Emperor suspected the former Jedi would continue to be his apprentice, he couldn't be sure, so he pushed further. Gleefully, the Emperor told Vader that there was nothing to be done, that it was his fault through the anger he had so carefully instilled within the once promising Jedi. Skywalker had been sold on a lie, and now there was no turning back. The notion that if he joined the dark side, he could save Padme was similar to the many told by Sidious to bring more people to his cause, and once under his control, it was too late. Palpatine was comfortable in the knowledge that Skywalker was in immense pain, and even said it was a gift left to him in the wake of his late wife's death, allegedly at his hands. One thing was made very clear as Vader remained hunched over in grief and the Emperor began to rise. The only alternative to not utilizing this pain was death. Vader, powerless and without any hope nor people except the Emperor, had no choice but to agree. Though his new life as a Sith Lord was providing him with nothing but despair, it had just begun, and having just escaped death very recently, he wasn't about to put himself in danger again.
I will live.
His newly fitted voice box was already starting to croak. The new Sith Lord was already a hulking image of sadness and anger. But he had no choice. The Emperor claimed his tone, reaching the same decibel level as Vader's. However, it was a strangely calm silence that followed, a silence that was all too short. As was now to be expected from Sidious, his words meant nothing. A sudden crack of Force lightning exploded from his fingertips, soon proved that point. Vader's once slumped husk was now alert at the injection of a multitude of electric volts coursing through his body, glowing an electric blue color as he groaned in agony, and the Emperor laughed in glee. Though being the perpetrator of the violence, Sidious implored Vader to fight back and defend himself with his lightsaber, but the hopeless Vader didn't even have that at his disposal. Now even weaker, Anakin barely spit out the words explaining that Obi-Wan had taken it in their preceding fight on Mustafar, which was meant with a totally opposite tone by the Emperor. Bellowing a resounding no, Sidious eventually ceased his lightning fire, lecturing Vader in the fact that he is now a different person.
The blade belonged to another, a Jedi. You are a Sith.
Anakin Skywalker was dead, and his lightsaber along with him. Darth Vader had been born. The steam and smoke from the violence plumed around the room and between the two Sith Lords. With his lightsaber ignited, Sidious began to sympathize with his apprentice. Saying he knew of the trauma he was facing, he also delivered a strict message.
If you touch me with the Force again, I will finish what Kenobi could not.
To the outside, it seemed that Vader reveled in his newfound power and stance in the galaxy's most powerful outfit. But the truth behind the scenes was in reality rather sad. He was under the stern grip of his new master, who was betraying the trust he had built up within Skywalker since childhood. Though the Emperor's training would eventually work its way into Vader's mind and fuel his anger and power, there would always be a hint of Anakin within the infamous costume. But for the moment, he was in a great struggle between his former and current identity, made all the more difficult by Sidious's hold.